Before we begin our critique of the knowledge base in educational administration, I'd like to review the notion of paradigms and perception. Thomas Kuhn observes that scientific disciplines use paradigms or ways of viewing the world that are widely accepted by its members and consequently used to explain phenomena. Thus, paradigms not only define what knowledge is acceptable within a profession, but also determines who has the power to decide reality. Social scientists have posited that what you believe may influence what you see. Let me ask you a quick question. What do you see in the next slide? If you saw a white equilateral triangle, your mind played a trick on you. In fact, none is actually drawn. Look again. In some, your mind filled in the blank. In a similar way, your assumptions about the world around you are influenced by the context, your experiences, your belief, your family, and so on. Let's take a minute to talk about paradigms. Kuhn defines paradigm as a set of assumptions, concepts, values, and practices that constitutes a way of viewing reality for the community that shares them, especially in an intellectual discipline. Thus, all scientific inquiry reflects some basic assumptions and fundamental beliefs that are held by the researcher, including the nature of human relationships and the nature of reality. Kuhn used the duck-rabbit optical illusion to demonstrate the way in which a paradigm shift could cause one to see the same information in an entirely different way. Take a look at this optical illusion. What you see, either a duck or a rabbit, may depend on your culture, your beliefs, your past experiences, your gender, race, etc. Now take a look at this picture. Is it a vase or two people? When conducting a study, the researcher must be sensitive to the assumptions and perspectives that influence questions posed and analysis of data. Paradigms are as common to life as they are to research. They are functional in that they provide a way to interpret our complex world and provide rules for practice and solving problems. Because they help us interpret the world around us, they can also block our ability to see events and data in new ways. In other words, the paradigm effect or groupthink. They can also stifle innovation in organizations. In this regard, paradigms control our perception. In other words, I'll see it when I believe it. But people can change how they view the world by changing paradigms. There are multiple and diverse paradigms, and each provides a unique perspective that may provide leverage for understanding and problem solving. Thomas Kuhn wrote a groundbreaking book, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, in which he observes that science does not progress in an orderly fashion from lesser to greater truth, but rather remains fixated on a particular dogma or explanation, a paradigm, which is widely accepted by members of a particular scientific discipline. A new paradigm may be established only with great difficulty. Those working in a discipline often rigidly adhere to an accepted paradigm that defines what knowledge is legitimate within the profession. Those who propose changing the dominant paradigm must be preeminent and unassailable by others. Thus, the politics of science is less about objective truth than it is about who has the power to decide reality. Thomas Kuhn was a historian of science and a pragmatist who rejected the idea of a pristine empirical foundation for science on which scientific theory is built in a smooth, cumulative way. He notes that observation is theory-laden, shaped by the humanly constructed paradigms that scientists unavoidably bring to their observation. Selecting a theory over its competitors requires weighing competing values. Hence the phrase, "I will see it when I believe it." The notion of critique is an accepted process of scholarly analysis and public debate. It's based upon an informed opinion. Critiques are never based upon personal opinion and never involve ad hominem or personal attacks. Engaging in a critique of Culbertson and Donmoyer's discussion of the knowledge base in educational administration gives you an opportunity to critically examine ideas associated with research methods and the purpose of research. In seminar discussions, you should critique one of these topics using different paradigms or ways of viewing the world. Several different options are offered in the assigned readings, including Culbertson and Don Moyer's Positivist and Postmodern Research Perspectives, the Purpose of Research, and Professional Preparation, as well as Race and Gender Theory, discussed by Ipka and Shakeshaft. Each will be briefly reviewed. Let's take a closer look at positivist and post-positivist perspectives and how we may use these points in a critique. Positivists assert that the only authentic knowledge is based on what actually happens and is verifiable. They hold that scientific method is the one best way to understand physical and human events. Positivist perspectives and quantitative methods dominate the behavioral sciences. And in this tradition, research questions emerge from theory and findings are used to build theory. On the other hand, post-positivists argue that human knowledge is based not on unchallengeable foundations, but rather is constructed by human beings. They borrow concepts from history, anthropology, sociology, and political science and use qualitative methods to understand human experience. Critical theorists are oriented towards understanding political and social problems, situating them in historical and cultural context, and changing society as a whole. Feminist theory aims to understand the nature of gender inequality by examining women's social roles and lived experience, and feminist politics in a variety of fields. While generally providing a critique of social relations, much of feminist theory focuses on the promotion of women's rights, interests, and issues. In their quest for a knowledge base, reformers have failed to consider the beliefs of women on conceptualization of administration paradigms. Shakeshaft notes that although female experiences were different than those of males, they were ignored. Feminist theorists believe that the knowledge base in the field is grounded on studies of white males, by white males, and being male-oriented implies male superiority. The connection between research, theory, and practice suggests the need to expand the literature to include relevant gender perspectives. Critical race theory is a post-positivist movement that studies and attempts to transform the relationship between race and power. It does so by examining the role of race and racism within the foundations of modern culture. Critical race theorists reject the logical positivist arguments for empirical data and embrace the notion that knowledge is socially constructed. They use narratives to expose the pervasive, institutionalized, and debilitating nature of racism in America. Critical race theory has become especially important in education, where the educational experience and academic outcomes of children are often connected to racial background. Critical race theorists argue that the possession of whiteness and property are correlated to everything from test scores to teacher ethnicity, and they form the basis for future acquisition of income, wealth, health, and longevity. They critique empiricist entrenched biases in dominant knowledge-based paradigms that ignore diversity in American society. What I'd like to do now is pose several questions and tasks. In review, what is a paradigm? What are the opposing perspectives in the paradigm wars? At this point, we've had an opportunity to critically examine the development of the knowledge base in educational administration. What I'd like you to do now is to pick one of the 4 frames of reference for your critique and support your position using relevant literature. Your options include the different perspectives advocated by positivists and post-positivists, postmodern feminine scholars, postmodern critical race theorists, the purpose of research, theory testing and building a positivist position versus practitioner problem solving, a post-positive position. One of the most important aspects of your work is applying what you know to solve problems. In closing, I would like you to think about how culture, experience, and beliefs may influence your view on the world.